And the last dealer I hit that day was a gentleman and his wife, older gentleman and his wife, had a whole bunch of junk there. Had all kinds of automotive stuff, new and used junk stuff, you name it. And sadly, when I went through the flea market on the first pass, I didn't see this guy's stuff. And then when I went through on the second pass, I think he came in later. He had unpacked his stuff. And right when I walked up, there was a guy who had spotted a diesel injector nozzle tester. Now, I have one of these. I forgot what brand it is that I have. I have a pretty good sized one now that I thought I scored a hell of a deal on when I think I paid like $100 for that thing. And this one, was pretty clean looking. It was a smaller one. And of course, there were no nozzles or anything to go with it. Or so I thought. And literally while the guy, here's the funny thing. The guy asked what the thing was. So I'm like, does he really not know what it is? Or is he being coy? And it turns out he was being coy. So the guy told him, he says, oh, it's for testing diesel injectors. And I was like, okay. So the seller knows what it is. I still don't know if this guy is going to buy it or not. So he's just kind of looking at it, and I'm waiting. Because I'm basically waiting to see if he's going to ask how much it is, make an offer or whatever. So finally, he gets around to asking the guy what he wants for it. And he says, oh, $20, which is unbelievably good steal for that thing. And unfortunately, and then he didn't say, okay, I'll take it right away. What he did was he kind of put it down, but he didn't put it down. He didn't put it back. He put it down. And then I realized what he was doing was he started to look through more stuff and he was making a pile. So then I kind of lingered around and hung out and waited just to see what was going to happen. Finally he ended up buying it, all the stuff that he put together. So I missed out on that. That was that would have been the deal of the day, and it would have made the whole trip worthwhile. But unfortunately, I missed out on it. And he bought a whole bunch of automotive stuff. I was pretty sure he knew exactly what the hell he was buying. I think he was just being coy. The guy had other junk there too, and I found this one looks like it's new and it's just missing the package. And then I found this one brand new in the package. And these are Radio Shack brand, probably Archer or something like that, solder suckers. So these are for desoldering electrical connections. So you heat up the connection with the soldering iron, you cock it like that, and you put this tip near the molten solder, and you press this, and it creates a rapid vacuum and sucks the molten solder up inside there. Then you push this down, and if you push it past, see the little tip comes out there, and that actually is what is to push the solder out, get it ready for the next charge. All right, so I have a better quality one of these right now, but it's pretty old, and I got the pair of these for $1, so no harm in having a couple more of these laying around. And then I got this thing for $1, and when I first saw it, I was like, boy, I'd love to be able to use that for fuel, but I don't know if it would, work, be okay to use it for fuel. And then I looked at it more closely and realized, son of a gun, it's exactly what this is. This is a Flow and Go, FLON apostrophe Go, Enviro pump. This is made in Canada, patented in the U.S. and Canada, European patent pending, made in Canada. So this looks like a really cheesy thing, and that actually made me wonder if this thing was even good at all. But then what I did was I actually took the thing off here. This clip comes off so that you can unlock it. This is what keeps somebody from pumping this by accident, I guess. Real high-tech design. A monkey can figure out how to trick termites, how to fish termites out of a termite mound, but I can't figure out how to get that off. Okay, so so now we can do this, right? And that rattling around is probably just a check valve, so that's probably normal for it to make that sound because it appears to work perfectly fine. If I see, somebody stuck wire nuts in here to seal the openings and keep dirt or anything from getting in there when it's not being used. So So if I take the wire nuts out from both ends, okay, and if I take this end, which is the end that you would put into the bucket or tank, and I cover it, and I do this, see? It's creating a vacuum. And if I push this, and I feel in the end here, it's creating pressure. If the check valve internally was broken on this and wasn't working correctly, it wouldn't work at all. So I have no reason to believe that this won't work. And this is like perfect timing for me to have bought this, because I've got that big aluminum tank that I pulled out of the Concorde boat, and it's got all that stale fuel in it. And because it's so damn heavy, it would be a nightmare to try and tip that thing and pour it out and get it without getting gas everywhere. Well, now I can just stick this hose down in and pump the gas out. So that was I was really happy about that for $1. This reminds me, this obviously is not the intended hose for this. This hose was cut by somebody. I don't know if the hose went bad or got damaged. But this was actually such a tight fit, it actually still creates a pretty good seal. So I'll be able to use it like that. All right, guys, I'm pretty sure that's it. Believe it or not, you know, down and dirty, fast and furious, whatever you want to call it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this flea market finds episode. I will have, like I said, I'm going to have a video coming up where I'm going to show that vise, and then probably in a couple more weeks I'll have another flea market finds to cover the stuff that I just picked up a couple days ago. And well, if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing, and as always, thanks for watching. Oh, hold the phone. I totally forgot about this item. Quick disclaimer, this is not a machinist related item, but neither were these solder suckers, right? It's not even a tool related item. This actually is a vintage electronics item, but it's the only thing I picked at the flea market that day that was vintage electronics related. So rather than hold it for its own video, I am going to unveil it right here, right now. So give me a second. So yeah, so this thing was on the guy's table who I bought the solder suckers from, and the gas pumping thing, and he had the diesel injector thing, right? So he had this on the corner of his table, and it was all shrink wrapped up, so you couldn't really see what the hell it was. So it was all wrapped in plastic, and a guy came along and was looking at it, and then he mentioned something to a guy that was with him, so I heard them talking about radios. I was standing at the back side of that table, so I could see the back of it, and I said, well, it's got a PL259 connector on the back, because they were trying to figure out if it was a scanner or what it was. So they looked on the back, and they were like, oh, and then it had a connector on the back. They couldn't quite tell what it was. So start looking at the thing. So then I come around, and I'm looking at it with them, and we decide, pull the plastic off a little bit, and could see that it was apparently a CB radio. So I was like, oh, it's a CB radio. Oh. No microphone. So then the guy asks the seller, hey, what are you asking for on the radio? So he asks the seller's wife, and she gets the husband's attention, and he's like, I don't know, $10? And the guy says, well, you have the microphone for it? And he's like, nah, whatever's there. And this guy says, would you take 5? And to the gentleman's credit who was selling it, he says, I think it's worth 10. So then he's thinking about it. I said, I tell you, I said, if you're not going to take it for 10, I will. So let me show you what I got for $10. Still all shrink wrapped exactly the way that I saw it on the table. So not completely shrink wrapped, okay, but you can kind of see what's going on through here. All right. So we opened it up, we tore this apart over here just enough so we could look and see that it has a 23 channel selector. So we knew it was a 23 channel radio. Didn't know much more about it, and we knew it was a CB because it was 23 channel and it had the mic cradle over here on the side. Well, turns out what this is actually from back in the day, a pretty damn nice radio. This is a Johnson. This is a Johnson CB radio. Just give me a second off camera here to deal with this stupid plastic wrap. So this fuse just fell out. Alright, so what this is this is a Johnson Viking model 352. And this is actually, from what I read online, guys reviewing these, that back in the day this was actually a pretty good radio that's really well made. And the other thing that's really cool about it that neither me or that guy knew at the time, which probably would have made him beg, borrow, or steal the other $5 to pay the $10 and get this, is that this is a 23 channel radio, but it is also a sideband radio. This is the mode switch right here. It's got 3 lights here: USB, AM, and USB, AM, and LSB. So it's got upper and lower sideband, 23 channel radio. And the reason why it looks kind of weird is because what this really is this is a mobile radio that is on this module that actually becomes the 12 volt regulated power supply, so that you can run it in the house. All right. So on the back here, you can actually kind of see the delineation here. You can see that, you know, if you don't look at this lower part here and this part, we just cover that up, you're looking at the back of a 23 channel mobile radio. And here's your regular 12 volt connections right here. Okay, go right in here, so you can run it off the 12 volt system in your car. Okay, and you've got an external speaker and a PA speaker hook up here. This weird plug on the back that we didn't know at the time what the hell it was, it's the microphone plug. The weirdest thing, and probably the only pet peeve I saw people mention about this particular model radio, was that they put the damn mic cord, mic input on the back. Alright, so that was kind of weird. But anyways, so it's even got binding posts here where these connections are made. There's a quick disconnect. Okay. So we got a 12 volt regulated power supply, and then it almost looks like there should be a speaker in the front of this, but I don't think there is, because I don't see any way it would hook up. And I'm not quite sure how this locks onto... Oh, I see right there. These 2 screws here with the big washers on them. I guarantee if I pull those 2 screws, I can take this mobile radio right off. But, well, let's see. This fuse... Is this fuse blown? It's funny, that fuse looks like hell, but I don't think it's blown. And as long as we have a fuse protecting it, why the heck not try and take it for a test drive? No, I don't mean I'm going to key the microphone. Oh, I see what's wrong here. The plastic little lugs on this fuse holder are broken off. So that's why the fuse was in there loose. So we're not going to get any mojo out of this thing with this fuse holder on here. I could probably scare up another one of these at a later date. It's still, I mean, for the age, it does look really, really clean. I'm going to see if I can just hold that fuse holder together long enough to get a, see if we can get anything out of this thing. So I don't see any master switch or anything on this power converter, so I guess it maybe is just always putting out 12 volts when it's plugged in. Strikes me as a little odd for the design, but you know, whatever. Let's see, this looks like off volume. The power. And at max volume I don't have any sound, but that's not unusual. This might be one of those deals where we've got to have the microphone plugged in for the receive to work. I'm pretty sure that's probably what's going to be going on here, so just for the hell of it, let's try the squelch. Oh, nope, don't have to have a microphone. There we go. The squelch was up. So the squelch circuit works. I'm in AM right now. That's the CBPA switch. Sideband. Those are your sidebands. Okay, so let's see. I'll throw a wire or an antenna on there real quick. Something for an antenna, just see if we can get any skip out of it. Don't have an antenna handy, but if I just take this wire and touch it to the 259 connector, we get a lot of noise. So the receiver is definitely not dead. You know, I had mentioned that it's great that this thing is sideband, but I had forgotten about one very important fact. This is a 23 channel sideband radio, and back in the days of CB, and probably still now where CB is fairly active, it was kind of an unwritten rule that the sideband guys tended to stay on certain channels or stay in certain areas of the band because of the fact that if you were on an AM radio and you went to a channel where somebody was on the sideband, on the AM side it made this horrible noise, or it was kind of a it was just this, it sounded really weird and you couldn't understand what the people were saying. So it would be frustrating if you were trying to listen to somebody and they were on sideband and you didn't have the ability to go to sideband. So for that reason, people tended to migrate to certain channels for sideband. Back in the days when it was 23 channel, I don't know exactly what channels they tended to hang around, but I know that when they went to 40 channels, all the sideband guys started to kind of stay up above channel 30, and in fact a lot of them stayed above channel 35. They stayed in that 35 to 40 range. And then of course when you had guys who would hotwire their radio so that they could go for extra channels and go above channel 40 where you're technically not supposed to be going, that's where the sideband guys live. So it's very rare, I think, these days to find anybody talking on sideband below channel 24. So you know, that kind of hurts the ability to do anything with this radio in reality, but it's still kind of a neat collectible. The channel selector, if I rotate it, it will die. But then if I go to any particular channel, doesn't matter which one, and I wiggle the channel selector, it livens back up again. So clearly the contacts in this channel selector are going to need to be cleaned, and you know, they're probably, actually that one's not bad at all. I would have expected them to all be a little scratchy. So the other thing that's kind of unusual to me about this radio is that there's no clarifier, but there is a fine-tune knob. So I think what they're doing is, I think they're using the fine tune as the clarifier. When you go on sideband, typically you have a clarifier, and what you do is you adjust the clarifier so that you can get the frequency just right. Essentially the radio is reinserting a carrier wave. It's generating it internally, and if the frequency's off, the people you're speaking to will sound sort of like, you can make them sound like Donald Duck or you know, it's beyond description. So I can't quite tell, because there's no activity on there. I can't tell whether or not this is working as a clarifier or not. Oh, one last thing. I was just getting ready to put this radio way up on the shelf, and I noticed on the floor underneath the bench that this also fell out of the bag, and it's a 3.5 millimeter mono plug jumper, and I immediately realized, oh, look what I didn't notice under here. Right there is the speaker input jack. So there is a speaker inside this housing, and the idea is that when you're using it on the base module, you would put this in the external speaker jack like so, and now that speaker up inside here is working, making the audio come out the front, as opposed to when you go mobile and you're disconnecting it, the speaker is actually on the underside facing down. So right now the speaker is being muffled by the fact that it's sitting in this cradle. But if it were mounted under dash from a bracket or overhead, like in a truck, then that speaker would be actually working perfectly fine. But anyways, alright, so that's going to be a wrap. This is the last thing I wanted to show you guys.